They say revenge is a slow thing. They also say it's ugly. Both are true. But no one tells you the other truth, that sometimes revenge is the only thing that keeps a broken mind from falling apart. My name is Claire Morgan. I used to believe in honest love, in mutual promises, in the small, everyday things that hold two people together. The coffee cups in the sink, the late-night apologies, the way a hand finds your back when the room is loud and you're afraid. I don't believe any of those things in the same way anymore. I met Adam on a cold October evening at a gallery opening. One of those pretentious nights where people pretend they understand color the way they understand wine. He wore a dark coat and a quieter laugh than the others. He listened. That mattered to me then. We moved fast. Apartment in a small neighborhood, Sunday mornings painted with light, a plan to start a small consultancy, mostly design jobs, a few contracts here and there. He had charm. I had stubbornness. Together we had something that looked like a future. People who love only see the best of those they love. It's soft. It shelters you from detail. It's also how you miss the cracks that matter. The first crack was small. An offhand text at 2 a.m. I read on his phone when he slept. A laugh emoji. A private name. I told myself not to look. I told myself trust is a choice. But the next one, a canceled meeting he'd told me about. Then a lipstick on his collar. Another time, an expense he couldn't explain. Little things aligning until the pattern wasn't a pattern anymore. It was a truth. When I confronted him, his face was smooth. He chose pity like a weapon. He said it was nothing. He said I was imagining places. He said everything to keep my trust in place. I started looking, not because I wanted to, but because a small voice inside me would not stop asking, what is he hiding? And once you begin to ask, the mind becomes a lantern. It finds what it seeks. I found Ava by accident, or maybe not by accident. She was a fixture at the consultancy, charismatic, efficient, always first to the coffee machine, with a smile that was practice. She and Adam worked late. They texted each other about deadlines, then about dinners, then about flights. I found the first proof in a shared drive, a folder with invoices. Then a message thread where Adam used a different tone, the tone lovers use when they think no one is reading. There were receipts that didn't match explained travel, an unsigned contract that promised more than their company could afford, and someone receiving payments in a private account. That's one of the cruelties of betrayal. It makes you a detective in your own life. You gather small truths like evidence, and each one makes you smaller and harder and more afraid of what the next truth will look like. When you are betrayed by the person you trusted most, two things happen at once. Your heart breaks and your mind sharpens. You are left walking in the ruins, and there is no handbook for the way forward. So I made one. I could have screamed. I could have walked away and died quietly. Instead, I chose to be methodical. I would not let this theft of my life, of our life, be invisible. He had taken my trust. I would take his truth. My plan was not born of heroics. It was born of practicalities, evidence, timing, alliances. I needed documents, dates, and people who would listen when I had proof. The very thing he used to hide, paperwork and numbers, would be the thing I used to expose him. I made a list. I photographed screens. I copied folders. I kept receipts. I wrote notes as if I were a lawyer preparing a case. It felt ridiculous and righteous at once. If this story has a dark corner, a place where the air changed, It was when I realized I wasn't the only one with a secret chessboard. Sophie, my oldest friend, the person I thought would stand on my side no matter what, began to act strange. Small evasions. She asked about Adam's business in ways that sounded like curiosity, but were more like reconnaissance. She would be near my apartment under the pretense of coffee, but the way she watched my face felt like she was taking notes. I trusted Sophie. I told her pieces of the plan because I needed someone to hold the others of my sanity. She held them and smiled. She promised discretion. She promised loyalty. And then I found out she had been talking to Ava. Not just talking, advising. Betrayal multiplies. It does not stop at lovers. It eats sideways. Sophie was not only complicit in the lie, she was, in ways I could not have foreseen, helping to hide the pattern. At the time, it felt like the floor had opened below me. A second betrayal is a special kind of hurt because it confirms a new truth. You are more alone than you imagined. This changed everything. I had expected to maneuver around two people. I was dealing with an entire network of convenience. But I did not shrink. Instead, I widened my vision. If he was hiding money, I would trace it. If he used corporate accounts, auditors would find anomalies. If Sophie and Ava spoke, then they left traces. People always leave traces if you know where to look. I contacted someone quietly, an old professor from my finance class who owed me a favor. I paid him in quiet, because favors are currencies, and sometimes you must buy the truth with the same coin you were robbed with. We built a timeline. I recorded voicemail messages, matched timestamps, tracked transfers. Each piece did not just point to betrayal, it pointed to fraud. The moment the affair became more than romance and turned into theft, the map changed from personal pain to criminal liability. The first time I confronted him with facts, he laughed like a man who believed himself untouchable. He said, "You think numbers can hurt me?" He was wrong. Numbers can kill reputations. Numbers can get you arrested. He tried to buy my silence with a small check and a plea. He said he would fix things. He promised therapy like a bandage. He tried to reframe his crimes as mistakes. The arrogance of that moment was a kind of cruelty. I accepted none of it. I asked for time. I said I needed to consider the facts. I wanted to watch him squirm a little longer, to see if his guilt would crack his mask. There is a thin line between being strategic and being consumed. I stayed on the right side for most of the time, but there were nights, long, dark, greedy nights, when thoughts of revenge were like a white-hot light behind my eyes. I dreamt plans. I woke with plans. I almost lost myself in the shapes of what would be done. When obsession sits at the table, it eats everything else. I had to remind myself why I was doing this. Not for pride, but for justice. Not to humiliate him for sport, but to protect every person he might fool next. That is the cruel mercy of revenge. It promises relief, but often delivers a new hunger. Just when I thought I had control, a rumor appeared online. Someone had started to whisper about our company. Contracts were questioned. Adam's name was on forums. People he worked with were being called into meetings. He lost a client or two. That should have been good news. Instead, it was a blow, because the leak came before I was ready. I hadn't authorized anyone to go public. I hadn't wanted the rumor mill. I tracked it. It led me, for the first time, to my own friend Sophie. She had, in moments of fear or greed, contacted a blogger. She told half-truths. She wanted to help, she said later. She wanted the truth to surface. Maybe she thought she was doing right. But when truth becomes a game for someone else's hands, it becomes messy. The public scandal hit before the legal foundation was sound. Adam hired expensive lawyers and tried to silence the chatter. He accused me of character assassination. The world, our small industry world, fractured into camps. I retreated and rebuilt. The mistake taught me to be surgical. If you want a man like him taken down, you must do it with the law and with precision. Public rumor is messy and leaves victims in its wake. I wanted something that would make the courts speak, not the gossip. So we shifted. I worked with the professor. We compiled documents. We found the money trail from the consultancy to a shell account that paid for Ava's trips, for secret dinners, for consultations that didn't exist. We documented altered invoices. We showed how Adam had siphoned funds into personal accounts and used company names as a cloak. We had enough to open a formal complaint. We had the proof, not the kind that can be whispered away, the kind that needs an auditor, a judge, a signature. The day we filed the complaint, I felt heavy and light at the same time. Heavy with the weight of a months-long lie. Light because an unbearable pressure had a release valve. We met with attorneys. We served subpoenas. They were shocked, not in the way of moral outrage, but in the way people are shocked when their comfortable assumptions are challenged. They asked for more documents. We had them. They asked for witness statements. We found people who had been quietly uncomfortable, who now found the courage to speak. And then the slow machine of justice began to move. Revenge is never clean. It invites a backlash. Friends I thought would stand with me wavered under pressure. Suppliers who feared the company's collapse called for settlements. People took sides because survival demands choices. There were nights I sat under a single lamp and wondered if I had done more harm than good. Had I traded love for bitterness? Was this ugly thing justified? Would Adam's humiliation bring me peace? I asked myself those questions often. I did not always like the answers I heard back. The courtroom is a stage where truth is both stripped and validated. I sat under the fluorescent lights and told the story as a calm list of facts. No crying, no performance. The judge prefers clarity over drama. Adam's defense tried to paint me as a scorned lover, a woman whose grief had metastasized into vindictiveness. They asked, how could a woman know the complex world of invoices and accounts? They tried to make the method sound like madness. But method is not madness. Evidence is not emotion. Our documents were meticulous, our timelines precise. In one hearing moment, when the ledger matched a receipt and a private transfer showed Ava's flights booked on the same date, the defense faltered. You could see it, the tiny shift in the evaluation of truth when numbers align with witness accounts. The court did not sentence him to prison that day, but it did freeze assets. It did show the world there was cause to investigate. It did remove the shield he had used for so long. When the legal part began to close, another part of me opened. I had spent months looking outward, for proof, for alliances, for retribution. I hadn't looked inward enough. I had to ask, what now? I had imagined a moment of vindication, him humbled, me triumphant. But life rarely gives you a single scene, clean and audible. What came instead was a complicated quiet. He was no longer the man I loved. He was a man of actions and consequences. But the person I had been, full of trust and simple happiness, was scarred too. I mourned that version of myself, mourned the naive warmth, mourned the belief that the world is mostly gentle. There was one last move to make, not vicious, not petty, a closure. The law had done its part, but there were still small things he used to control. Emails, accounts, a portfolio of creative work under his name. He had left a mark in our community that was both financial and reputational. The last step was to expose, cleanly, every misattributed work, to publish corrections, and to ensure clients knew the truth. We issued statements, arranged client calls, returned money where necessary, and publicly credited work to the rightful people. It was not spectacle, it was repair. It was setting the record straight so others would not be fooled the way I was fooled. Months later, I walked past the office where we had once signed plans together. I paused. For a second, I wanted to run in, to shake the walls, to find him and ask him why. But the want was quieter now. Instead, I left a single note on a bench, a small act of closure that no one would ever understand but me. Truth matters, it read, not for revenge, for repair. There is one final thing I need to tell you, because the story does not only belong to me. In all of this, the person I hurt most was myself. But the final twist, it came in a way no one expected. Sophie, the friend who had spoken to the blogger, who had left us vulnerable to public rumor, she came to me one evening after the court froze accounts. She did not come with excuses. She came with a silent suitcase and truth. She told me she had been blackmailed, that when she confronted Ava about the transactions, Ava played her like a violinist. Ava said, "Help me or I tell your secret." Sophie had secrets, small, private confessions that could have hurt her family. In the end, she chose to protect herself. I had condemned Sophie. I had felt utterly betrayed. But the truth was more complicated. People are not just traitors, sometimes they are terrified. This does not excuse her actions, it simply explains them. Complexity is not forgiveness, but it is understanding. When the dust settled, the community rebalanced. Clients returned, the consultancy's name changed hands, Ava left the city, Adam, stripped of assets and with a reputation in ruin, relocated. The legal judgments would take time. People murmured, I listened, and I made a choice. I would not let revenge swallow the rest of my life. I had wanted justice, and I had achieved it, but I would not live from the hunger of justice forever. That is not a life worth reclaiming. In the end, the court ruled against him on several counts. He paid fines, he returned funds, he lost clients that never returned. In a practical sense, I had my victory. In a moral sense, something else had been settled too. The truth had been told. But victory came with a price. Relationships were frayed. Friendships were complex. I had been forced to grow in ways I hadn't chosen. My heart had been tempered. I could imagine some people listening now, whispering, was it worth it? My answer is that it was necessary. Not beautiful, not simple, but necessary. It repaired a wrong. It served as a warning. It protected others. Sitting now, years later, I can say two things with certainty. First, truth matters more than comfort. Second, revenge is not a place to live. It is a fire you pass through to find the next road. My life is quieter now. I do not speak of Adam every day. His name is no longer a chord in my chest. Instead, I remember small kindnesses I learned to give myself, the ability to set boundaries, the willingness to walk away before being broken, the courage to expose wrongdoing even when it's painful. Would I do it again? I do not know. I hope not, because I hope for a world where trust is not so easily sold. But if faced with the same theft of my life and my work, I would act, not for revenge alone, but for truth. Revenge, when it is completed, is not the end. It is the clearing of a path. You step onto it, and you try to walk towards something better. Fading mind, where pain is remembered and truth is chosen.